When you look at how some people lose their footing in the music industry, you usually see one big mistake that ends everything. For some artists, it is a single video or a single bad interview that ruins their reputation forever.
Fellas, lights up. Fellas, if you ain't nigga in the parking lot, put your cell phone like
Let's be real about this shit.
Yeah, keep it fucking real.
Some of y'all niggas suspect as a mom. Let's be real.
But with Tyga, the story is actually a lot more complicated than that. He didn't have one single moment where the world decided to walk away. Instead, his career felt like a long series of problems that kept piling up until the weight was just too much to carry. It was a mix of fighting with his record labels, dealing with constant money problems in the public eye, and making some very questionable choices in his personal life. By the time we got to the recent drama with the recent AI scandals, the foundation was already pretty shaky.
Tyga is for making an AI album.
To really understand how he got to this point, you have to go back to around 2011. That was the time when he was basically at the top of the world. He was part of the Young Money crew, which was the most powerful group in rap at the time. You had Lil Wayne and Drake and Nicki Minaj, and Tyga was right there with them. When he put out Rack City, it was a massive hit. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing that song. It was the kind of track that defined a whole era of club music. At that point, it looked like he was going to be a permanent fixture in the mainstream. He had the hits, he had the style, and he had the backing of a legendary label. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction for him.
Wale, you know, I'm just here trying to get in where I fit in, you know what I mean?
Just happy that I could be a part of such a record that's influencing and that's making so many young, ambitious dancers so much money. Welcome to Rack City.
No session anymore. This is everything they said.
However, things started to change behind the scenes. While the public saw him as a successful star, he was actually starting a huge fight with his labels, Cash Money and Young Money. He started going on social media to air out his grievances. He was telling everyone that he wasn't getting paid what he was owed and that his career was being held hostage. He specifically took aim at Birdman, who was the head of the label. This was a big deal because Birdman was known for having these kinds of disputes with his artists, but Tyga was one of the first to be really loud and aggressive about it. He wanted to release his project called The Gold Album 18th Dynasty, but the label kept pushing it back. The situation got so bad that he eventually decided to go independent to get the music out. When the Gold album finally dropped in 2015, it was a total disaster. Because he didn't have the big label machine behind him anymore, the sales were incredibly low. People were shocked at how a guy who was just at the top could sell so few copies. It was the first real sign that his momentum was starting to fade. When you lose that label support, you have to rely entirely on your fan base, and it seemed like the fans weren't as loyal as he thought they were. That failure with the album really hurt his standing in the industry. It made him look like he was losing his touch. While all of this music drama was happening, his personal life was becoming a huge distraction. He started a relationship with Kylie Jenner, and that put him in the middle of a massive media circus. Everywhere he went, the paparazzi were following him. People had a lot of opinions about that relationship, and most of them weren't positive. It felt like he was more famous for who he was dating than for the music he was making. At the same time, the news started reporting on his financial problems. It felt like every week there was a new story about him being sued. You started seeing headlines about him not paying rent on his mansions. There were stories about him being evicted. Then, the car situation started to get really messy. He was always posing with luxury cars like Ferraris and Maybachs, but then reports would come out saying those cars were being repossessed because he wasn't making the payments. There was even a story about a car being taken back while he was at a different car dealership. On top of that, jewelers were suing him for hundreds of thousands of dollars because he would take expensive pieces and then never pay the bill. All of this created a really bad look. It was hard for people to take his king persona seriously when they knew his cars were being towed away and he was getting kicked out of his house. It made his whole image of wealth feel like it was built on a deck of cards. By 2021, the problems moved from his bank account to his actual character. In October of that year, he ended up turning himself into the police. He was arrested on a felony domestic violence charge. His ex-girlfriend, Cameron Swanson, went on social media and posted some very disturbing photos. She had visible bruising, and she told the world that he had physically assaulted her. She also claimed that he wouldn't let her leave the house during the incident. This was a huge turning point for a lot of people. It wasn't just about money or label fights anymore. Now, it was about a serious allegation of violence. The internet was flooded with people calling him out. Even though the case didn't end with him going to prison for years or having his career completely erased right then and there, it left a permanent mark. It was a dark stain on his reputation that he couldn't just wash away with a new hit song. People started to look at him differently. When you have those kinds of images of an injured woman being linked to your name, it changes how the general public feels about supporting you. It made him a much more controversial figure than he already was. He tried to keep moving forward and focus on the music, but he seemed to be out of touch with what the public wanted. In July 2022, he released a music video for a song called Ay Caramba. Almost immediately, he faced a massive wave of backlash. People were saying that the video was full of lazy and offensive Mexican stereotypes. It felt like he was using a culture as a prop without having any real respect for it. The criticism was so loud that he actually had to take the video down and apologize. He went on a popular radio show to say he was sorry and that he didn't mean to offend anyone. But to a lot of people, it just felt like another example of him not thinking things through. It was like he was trying so hard to get a viral hit that he didn't care who he upset along the way. Now look at where things went in 2026. This was the year where things really hit a breaking point. He decided to release a new concept album called Starface. The whole vibe of the project was supposed to be 80s synth pop. It was a big departure from the rap music he was known for. But as soon as the album came out, people started noticing something strange about the sound. It didn't feel like it was made by humans. Critics and fans started pointing out that the instruments and the solos sounded like they were generated by artificial intelligence. In August of 2026, he did some interviews where he actually confirmed that the rumors were true. He admitted that he used AI generators to build the 80s synths and the guitar solos for the project. His defense was that he was trying to be a pioneer. He told interviewers that this was no different from when rappers first started using autotune. He argued that people hated autotune at first, but then it became the standard for the whole industry. He basically tried to say that he was just ahead of his time and that everyone would eventually be making music this way.
There are some people saying you shouldn't do it.
Well, the context is, well, unfortunately for Gen Z, they can't read. So nobody reads, you know what I mean? And what I said was, I used AI assisted things in the production. I said, all the vocals are me. I wrote all the songs. When it comes to the 80 synths and some of the guitar solos, yes, I used AI for that. But I didn't make a full AI album. It's not what I did. I was in the studio 3 months working on this. But it's just, it's at the end of the day, it's like, I'm just I'm a small piece of the puzzle in this bigger conversation, and it's really not my fight. You know what I mean? It's just, I'm just telling people, because I like to be honest with the listeners of, kind of like how I used it, but I didn't, I indeed wrote the songs and that those are my vocals. You know what I'm saying? We use some AI sounds in the production, but we still created everything. As an artist that's been doing this for so long, I don't care. I don't mind it. I don't care. Like, I'm not scared for my position or scared because at the end of the day, I'm better than the AI, and I've proven that for the last 15 years. So it doesn't bother somebody like me. But I think maybe there's people that are scared that it's gonna, take their position and replace them. And, it's just a part of technology. Everything we use is AI.
The problem was that the audience didn't agree with him at all. Instead of seeing him as a visionary, they saw him as someone who was being lazy. People felt like he was cutting corners and taking the soul out of the music. If you were going to make a tribute to 80s music, you usually want to hear the craftsmanship of real instruments. Using a computer to generate the parts felt like a slap in the face to his fans. The reaction from the critics was absolutely brutal. Pitchfork, which is one of the most influential music sites, gave Starface a score of 0.0 out of 10. That is something that almost never happens. They wrote that the album's very existence made the world a worse place. It wasn't just a bad review, it was a total rejection of him as an artist. And it wasn't just the critics who were piling on. His own peers in the music industry started making fun of him. Doja Cat, who is one of the biggest stars in the world, went on a live stream and basically roasted the album. She was laughing about how bad it was and joined in on the internet mockery. When you have people you used to work with or who are in the same circle as you laughing at your work in front of millions of people, it is hard to recover. It turned him into a punchline. The internet was filled with memes and jokes about how he had officially fallen off. Well, when you look at the whole timeline, you can see that Starface was just the final blow. If he had a clean record and a lot of respect, maybe people would have been more forgiving about the AI experiment. But he didn't have any of that. He had years of label drama, years of being seen seen as a fake rich guy because of his repossessions, and the shadow of that 2021 arrest hanging over him. By the time he put out an album that felt like it was made by a machine, people were already tired of him. They were looking for a reason to finally stop paying attention, and he gave it to them. So when you think about the downfall of Tyga, it was a slow, painful decline that took over a decade to reach its end. He went from being the guy who had the biggest song in the country to being the guy who was getting a 0.0 rating on his albums. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when you let the drama outside of the music become bigger than the music itself. All of those things together created a situation where there was just no way back for him. The world moved on, and he was left with a 0.0 and a reputation that he probably won't ever be able to rebuild.